go for Jake, fouled round, and he's got it, and he's up and over the wall. Alec Thomas on the run, Alec on the ball. What a catch, Alec Thomas! Oh, wow! Seawall to strike away, here he comes. Cave, a fly ball to right field, over is Carroll. He's got it, and the Arizona Diamondbacks are headed to the World Series.
All right, well, welcome everybody to, I don't even know what episode we're on now. Is this 4? I think this is episode 4 or 5, maybe?
I think we're on 5.
Right on 5. Well, hey, at least you're keeping track. But welcome back to an episode of the Snakescast, kind of an emergency podcast in a way. I'm back with Riley, or DbacksProspects as he's known, in the online space, to talk about some pretty big news. And of course, if you haven't heard or you've been under a rock, the Diamondbacks have traded for 10-time Gold Glover, 8-time All-Star, without a doubt, future Hall of Famer Nolan Arenado from the St. Louis Cardinals. And in return, the Cardinals get Jack Martinez, a starting pitcher. It was a mid-round last year from my lovely Arizona State University. And the biggest caveat to this is that we get also $31 million from St. Louis. What is your initial take and first thoughts when everything was starting to go down, Riley?
I honestly love this move so far. If you're going to do a trade for a guy like Nolan Arenado, it almost always is going to come down to money. If you're paying up $15 million a year for Arenado, it was obviously going to be a negative deal. But only paying about $5 million a year, you only really need him to be league average to come out the other side on a positive end. He's a productive infielder. He's going to be a huge presence in a clubhouse. Still a quality defender, and I do think that Chase Field will help with his bat.
Yeah, Chase Field's a fantastic ballpark to hit in, regardless. It's the extra base haven for hitters, for sure. Just to put this into perspective, so the Arizona Diamondbacks, back in the 2023 offseason, signed a veteran third baseman in Evan Longoria. That deal was for $4 million. So you give Nolan Arenado where he's at right now. He's about a year younger than Evan Longoria was at the time of his signing. And we get him for an average of $5.5 million for the next 2 years. Nolan Arenado, a little bit more productive than Evan Longoria at the end of his career. The glove is 100% there still. So I think it's a good deal. I think something that we were lacking in the clubhouse was that veteran leadership. The past season, we had a lot of mid-level guys. Lots of drama happened. We didn't really have a guy that would kind of keep tabs on people like we did with Longoria in 23. So I think that helps a ton in that regard. And I can't see really a better fit for this Diamondbacks team than a hopefully resurging, power-hitting third baseman like Nolan Arenado.
I think that there's also a factor that he'll be protected in the lineup. I probably expect him to hit 6th in the order because you're going to have Perdomo, Marte, Carroll. You'll probably have Pavin in front of him as well. You could probably put Gabby in front of him too, or maybe another free agent bat, say Goldschmidt, or maybe they acquire someone else. But he's going to have a chance to sit in the order and not have to be the brunt of the offense. Whereas in St. Louis, you could argue that he's the second or third bat in that order. Besides Wilson Contreras and maybe a Lars Nootbaar. Maybe.
Well, and not even Wilson anymore. They got rid of Wilson too. He's in Boston now. So they really St. Louis is entering has fully entered the rebuild process there for sure. And I don't think with Nolan being very unprotected in that lineup, I think it makes sense for them to deal him away. But like you're saying, he is very protected in the Diamondbacks line. We have a very good top of the order. Some guys that can get on base on the back half. So I think this is a good move for him. I think we'll see definitely a resurge in numbers with Chase Field and the fact that he's so protected in the lineup.
One other thing I think factors into this is that this is really cheap for a guy like Nolan Arenado. It was my expectation at the very least that this would require a guy in the top 30, albeit on the back end. It would be probably a name like Chung Seung Hwang, or I was thinking just a name that maybe you can have some more hope on, a guy that you might be able to bet on in high A. I mean, let's just say like Avery Owosu-Asedu as an example. That kind of pickup would be who I was expecting. And having it only be a reliever who was not even in their top three relievers acquired during the draft, with no disrespect to Jack Martinez, that was huge.
Yeah, Jack's definitely a talented pitcher. You had the privilege of watching him at Arizona State, and I think he'll flourish into a guy eventually, but he's not that guy you're going to see at the major league level in 2 to 3 years. That was never going to be who he was. And I think St. Louis is one of those arm barn places that develops pitching really well. So I think that'll be very, very good for Jack Martinez to be in an organization like that. So I see it as kind of a win-win in that situation. Nolan Arenado gets out of spiraling St. Louis ball club, um, and Jack Martinez goes to a ball club that can develop arms. So I I love Jack Martinez. Like I said, at the time at ASU, I think he'll do well eventually. But Diamondbacks need to win right now, and Jack Martinez is a win in 5 or 6 years down the line kind of pitcher.
Jack Martinez was an interesting pitcher coming out of the draft because I think he was topping out at 97 and had really well developed secondaries as well. He had a mid 80s changeup that was really highly touted. Also had a nice curveball and cutter. So there was actually thoughts about him converting into a starter role. I wonder if that's what the Cardinals might be thinking here. Either way, though, he's an extremely funky reliever, or at least a really funky pitcher that you can hopefully bet on stepping up in the future.
I agree 100%. So obviously, best of luck to Jack Martinez. Hopefully, he does well in the Cardinals organization, and then hopefully that rebuild doesn't take too long in St. Louis. It seems like it's going to be a little bit. So dark days ahead of them for sure. However, in light of all of that, we now have an interesting lineup situation in Arizona. You had, Mike Hazen came out and said Jordan Lawler's your starting opening day third baseman. Back when no move had been made, obviously that does not look the same. Arenado 100% is going to be your third baseman. You have a guy like Blaze Alexander, who's infield and outfield. I imagine is going to get a lot of time in left field unless they make another move. But for me, the interesting part is everybody's always talked about Jordan Lawler playing consistent baseball, or having concerns about that. I think it's still possible, especially with the amount of DH time that Ketel Marte and Nolan are going to get. I think they'll probably spend a third of their time in the big leagues at designated hitter this next coming season. So I think Lawler will still get some playing time. But what do you see, I guess, as Lawler's future with this team right now? Do you think he's going to be that Ildemaro Vargas style player where he's bouncing around the infield for a little bit, giving guys off days, or do you think they're going to move on from him, or do you think they're going to try to stash him for a little while longer? What do you think?
Part of me thinks about the fact that he's only 23 and still has room to develop. He can already crush fastballs and still needs to develop swinging against breaking balls. The other part of me feels like he's going to get traded just because he's in a position where he's not got much room to go up at this point. Um, Especially when you have guys behind him who I would argue also have a decent shot of filling that role, and I think have a much higher floor than him. I would say a Tim Tawa type could probably work. Tommy Troy would also work in
Yeah.
that role. You can, if you get a left fielder or a half decent one on the market, let's say, I don't know, let's go with just go with whatever your favorite trade candidate is.
Jaron Duran's the favorite left field trade candidate everybody always wants.
Give up every prospect for Jaron Duran.
Yeah, all top 30 will shift entirely. Next 30 prospects will come up.
And with that, the issue I see with Waller though is that he's not going to get a consistent role. The best case scenario is that he gets Marte's leftover second base reps when he's at DH and maybe platoons with Alec. And because of that, I kind of do feel like he gets traded. I made a not so fun mock trade on Twitter/X the other day
Oh no.
for Freddie Peralta. I had it as Jordan Lawler, Tommy Troy, and Yortin Chalice. I do think it's going to be expensive though if they go a route like that. But it wouldn't shock me if he's traded either, especially if he gets you good arms in return. Something I was thinking about right now actually was a recent rumor that I did see. It's a little baseless, but apparently the D-backs are considering Jojo Romero, Matt Swanson, I think his name is pronounced, and Riley O'Brien from the Cardinals. Now, maybe you could say Matt Swanson and Riley O'Brien, and you would consider a guy like Jordan Lawler in that deal. The Cardinals are lacking a bit in top end infield prospects at the top of their system, besides JJ Weatherholt. And because of that, I could see a path to a deal with a player like Jordan Lawler.
You have to also have to remember there's rumors circulating with Brendan Donovan leaving St. Louis as well, so that opens up a second base slot. So I mean, you leave room for, JJ Weatherholt at third base and Lawler at second base and Mason Wynn at short, and all of a sudden you have the youngest infield in the league that's going to be with the team for 6 years. So I do think something like that makes sense. I would love for Lawler to get a shot. I think he has a high upside. I think he's a good baseball player. But he is gate kept, and the Diamondbacks are in a win now mode, and I think I want to see him get playing time. I don't want to see him linger, and I think obviously as a fan you want to keep your players, but as somebody that cares about players, you want to see them develop and you want to see them go out there and play baseball. At the end of the day, so I think either shipping Lawler for reliever or something like that helps win now makes sense. Um, I
I mean,
just good.
I wouldn't think it's like like if it's going to be a reliever, it's going to be a good arm with years of control. It's not
Yeah,
going to be.
gonna be like an AJ Puck kind of style of trade.
It would have to be a guy like AJ Puck. It'd have to
No,
be a guy that has some proven pedigree before,
no,
has at least 3 years of control, in my opinion. Um, what I will say with Lawler and the situation is, I don't think they make this kind of move if they're comfortable with Jordan Lawler or if they're not considering moving Jordan Lawler.
yeah,
You just don't make this kind of move without being like, hey, here's our top, basically still your top prospect at shortstop, second base, third base. And you don't just decide all of a sudden, like, hey, we're going to block him
for
with a
two
veteran.
years.
It's going to be
For two,
for 2 years.
yeah, 2 years.
And he's not going to be at shortstop. You got Perdomo. He's not going to be at second base. You got Marte. Definitely isn't a first baseman. He's not
No,
in right field. Probably in a left fielder. And center field's kind of blocked with Alec now. So with that, you've kind of cut him off from being able to play, at least consistently or without injuries happening above him. And because of that, I just kind of feel like he does get traded at this point. But that's not a guarantee. Apparently, they do want competitions in spring. Perhaps he's fighting with guys like Blaze Alexander, Alec Thomas. Apparently, Ryan Waldschmidt will also have a chance. There will be a lot of guys fighting in spring for those positions. And with that, I do think that they're kind of at this midpoint with a number of guys, whether that be Blaze, Tawa, Lawler, where you've got to decide now whether they're going to be starting in MLB or they're going to become bench guys or almost on a DFA train.
yeah, and I think just timing wise, right? You look at Arenado's 2 years. If you get the full 2 years out of Arenado, that's fantastic. I think the Diamondbacks have positioned themselves well to where if Arenado struggles, right, like the cap to release him or something that, or to even let him ride the bench and be one of those guys that mentors players is not drastic. Um, I I just can't see Lawler if they're sticking with Arenado at third, right? You have Ketel Marte locked in for 100 years. You have Geraldo Perdomo locked in for 15,000 years, with the extension that he just signed. So like you are locked into the infield that you see right now, barring whatever happens at first base for at least 2 years. And Jordan Lawler's going to run out of options. I don't know where he stands now. He's probably at two.
I can check if you want.
Yeah, he's probably. I think two options maybe. But I think you really open up the lineup for a guy like Tommy Troy, who has yet to have an option used, to take over one of those slots when Nolan Arenado leaves. And it kind of just puts Jordan Lawler up in the air. I think, if anything, like you said, I think he's going to be competing with Ryan Waldschmidt, Blaze Alexander, and Alec Thomas for an outfield spot at this point.
I just checked. Jordan Lawler only has one more option year.
Okay.
So after this year, he is either up in MLB or DFA.
Yeah, and so you keep him on the spring roster, right? You send him back down, and now all of a sudden he has no more options. Um, so very very interesting development for sure. It's very much lots of position battles again going to happen this year. I think last year the position battles were happening in the bullpen. This year we're gonna see a lot. We still have Ildemaro Vargas, who's going to be a non-roster invite, right? That can also play that role. So there's going to be so much competition surrounding it, and I can't see Lawler right now winning that, especially even just looking at his Winter League stats. It's going to be interesting. I'm very very curious to see what happens with Ryan Waldschmidt. Great player. Got a lot of pop. I think he'll be very good. I don't know if it's too early or not. But he's a very polished minor league player, so it's going to be a tough road ahead for Jordan Lawler and anybody trying to break through that infield. I think his only route right now is the outfield, and if it doesn't work out in spring, I don't think it's going to work out at all, and I think they need to ship him off.
Yeah. There's a couple other players involved as well that are going to factor into spring. Jose Fernandez is one name I've been thinking of. He finished off the year really well in, I believe it was, yeah, it was in Amarillo, but
Yeah.
he's shown some pretty interesting defense, has shown decent exit velocities from the right side of the plate, can play a number of positions. And before you look at his defense, I should note that he started the year as a first baseman with Amarillo, so I wouldn't treat that too strictly. Trying to go from first base defense to shortstop defense could not have been fun for him.
So it's funny. So something that I like to do, if you've been following my page for a little bit, is I like to do some farm reviews at the end of every week. At the end of every Sunday night, once all of minor league games conclude, I go through, I give kind of an update on how the farm's doing every week, and kind of I pick my players for the week. I'll pick a pitcher of the week. I'll pick a hitter of the week. And when I went to visit Amarillo, and I have to look it up now, he was in the midst of breaking a record that Corbin Carroll had set in Amarillo, which is how good his bat has come along. And for somebody to make that shift from first base to shortstop, have a high level defense, and have a bat like that, and I don't even know how old he's, 20, 21, in the realm of that. It's he's not being talked about enough. I'll just put it that way.
He's a very toolsy infielder, and he's going to be a part of a very interesting Reno group. Reno is honestly putting up a monstrous lineup for AAA. Your DH is probably going to be a guy like Luke Baker, who's all but built for AAA. You've got Ivan Melendez at first, Troy probably at second, if not Lawler. Short, you're probably going to have Fernandez. Third is going to be Groover. Outfield is some form of Vukovic, Robinson, and you could actually not probably, you're going to get Waldschmidt. You might even get Gavin Conticello. And then their rotation is going to be really interesting because you got Cole Drake, Christian Mena, Mitch Bratt. You're going to also have Dylan Ray, Spencer Geesting. The part I'm thinking about now, and I think it's relevant to what also happened today, is the pitching situation. There's very few pitchers on the 40-man roster and among the non-roster invites that are fully guaranteed a shot at being major league relievers this year. One of the guys that I do think has the best bet of it is Jonathan Loizaga or Johnny Lasagna,
Mr. Lasagna.
Who signed with the Diamondbacks earlier today on a minor league contract. He's a very fun name. He tops out into the triple digits. He's got a insane sinker. Last I checked, it was and not to get too nerdy, it's a .305 xwOBA against and a 25.5% whiff rate against, which for a sinker at major league level is stupid good. He's also got some really nice breaking balls, and he can generally stay around the zone. I do think that they're going to probably lessen his sinker a little bit just because it did kind of impede him at certain points. But at the same time, this is a really high upside arm. If you can keep him healthy, get him more consistent, this is the kind of guy who could be your bridge closer.
Yeah, I mean, and Spotrac was valuing his contract even after this season with the Yankees, where he had a couple injuries, at $4.5 million for his salary this year. You got him for a minor league deal. That's a steal, in my opinion. Um, going back to before we keep moving into Mr. Johnny Lasagna, I found what I was looking for Jose Fernandez. By the way, if you don't know this, in November of last year, they actually added him to the 40-man roster. So you'll see him in spring, and will be eligible to be on the major league roster. So something to look forward to there. Another person to stand in Jordan Lawler's way, because we keep stacking people in front of him. So in June of last year, he became the second youngest player in Amarillo history to hit three doubles in one game. The first person was Corbin Carroll, and the difference was, I think, 2 days time frame. So it's he's a good player. It's fun to watch Jose Fernandez play. I think sleeper pick. Nobody's talking about him on the 40-man roster now. Will be very interesting. Now, Johnny Lasagna, very, very high upside minor league signing. Very, very high upside. It reminds me a lot of the Shelby Miller minor league signing last year. A guy that has years of experience, has some good tools, and the concern is the injury history. But you're getting a guy on a minor league deal at major league talent, and somebody that could definitely make the bullpen out of spring training on a league minimum deal is a steal for the Diamondbacks right now.
I think that this is something that a lot of Diamondbacks fans were really wanting out of this offseason, at least on the minor league side, because besides names like maybe a Sean Dubin and a Junior Fernandez, we've not really seen them go to these high upside arms. They've not really gone to these guys where they'll have a full on clarified MLB role, which isn't the worst thing. You do need depth arms below that. And it's obviously nice to have guys like Taylor Rashi, John Curtis below if you really need innings. But at the same time, you can't keep running back with the same kind of veteran pickups, the same kind of just eating your innings types of guys. And I understand that because that's not worked for the past 3 or 4 years already. We've kind of been saying the same thing over and over again. Like, we need a high upside arms. You need a Shelby Miller. You need a Juan Murillo. You need those types of guys that you can kind of hope on. And even if they're not doing the greatest or they might have serious issues, you kind of need to bet on them and hope that they can really step up and be part of your team. Because otherwise, if you're bringing out guys like a Trevor Richards or a Casey Kelly, you're not going to be a team that's going to be consistently competitive. You just can't be making these kinds of signings where you're not betting on upside. I mean, and then this is what has resulted in some of the issues on their current roster. If you bet on pedigree and former veteran leadership over upside, you can end up with a situation like Eduardo Rodriguez is currently right now. You can end up with a Jordan Montgomery situation. Those kinds of things can happen both on the minor league and major league side. But with Jeremy Blight coming in, I'm kind of happy to see like one of these kinds of signings, along with like some of the more recent moves like Josh Graz. I mean, I'm starting to really like this offseason over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, the first 2 months were bewildering, but yeah, it started to pick up for sure. Going to your back to your thing about the whole high upside and kind of aging arms and stuff like that. So I pulled up the list of still available relief pitchers or people that have pitched in relief on Spotrac and sorted them by market value. There's a couple landmines in here. Your top arms on the market per market value. You have Nick Martinez, who's a starting pitcher, relief pitcher, is 35 years old. Market value is 14 million. Your best bet, you have Sarah Anthony Dominguez, who's probably the top arm on the market right now, $10 million market value. Chris Paddock, who was just converted to a relief pitcher this past season, $10 million. Then you have David Robertson, who's turning 41. Tommy Canley, who's turning 37 this season. Brent Suter will be 37 this season. Paul Sewald's back on the market. He's 36. Danny Coulombe's 36. Andrew Chafin's turning 36. Jake Junis is 33. Taylor Rogers, 35. And you have John King, who was non-tendered by the Cardinals as the next top free agent, market value at $2 million at 31 years old. So you got some landmines. I'm looking at the top. I don't see anybody in their 20s until we get to Josh Wikanowski, who was a non-tendered by Boston. Has no market value.
I think Winkanowski got hurt as well.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he was one of those guys who's going to be missing most of the season,
Yeah.
if not the entire season, if I'm not mistaken. So that's That barely counts. So with these signings, though, I feel like if you get like a Danny Colombe, or honestly, Andrew Chafin's got pretty good underlying metrics. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's run it back for the fifth time now.
Yeah. Bring him back. Also bring back oh my gosh, Sergio Alcantara.
Oh, God. He already signed away. He'll
Yeah,
be back by midseason, though. I
he
just
will.
know it.
He will.
E- Either him or Albert Almora Jr.
Yeah. One person that we haven't talked about that was with us last year that did very, very well for us is Jalen Beeks, who's still on the market. I think
Yeah,
bringing him back makes sense. I think you can bring back a guy like Andrew Chafin, has good underlying metrics right now. His market value is $4 million. I think that's an easy pay. He's basically the same cost as Nolan Arenado, which is ridiculous. Um, and then yeah, I think by way of trade is your next best option because there's really I'm looking at this list and it is very, very rough. Lots of high AAV, very old arms, in a pitching sense. I'm not saying if you're in your mid to late 30s, you're old by any sense, but in a baseball pitching sense, yeah, you're aging a little bit. Um, so yeah, very interested to see what they do bullpen wise. The minor league deal with Johnny Lasagna is a great start, in my opinion. I believe that is going to work out, and I believe he will be opening day bullpen for sure, unless he just implodes in the spring. Um, but yeah, I think you need somebody like Jalen Beeks to come back, and then I think you need a high leverage arm. Either you battle it out for Sir Anthony Dominguez with the savings you got in Arenado and call it an off season, or you're looking for trade pieces like a JoJo Romero, something like that.
I feel like it would be a righty more than a lefty, just because I think that there's going to be a lot of lefties on the roster besides a guy like AJ Puck who will be back around. I would say late July, mid August. I mean, you've already got yourself locked in with Brandon Garcia. You've also got Philip Abner. I'm trying to
Andrew
God.
Saalfrank's another lefty.
And yeah, Andrew Saalfrank. So you've already got
Yeah.
two guys who are going to be in leverage, and you've got Abner.
Yep.
I'm trying to think. God,
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
blank.
you bring back Beeks,
Oh
you'll
no,
have another lefty, and then
and then but that's four guys, and the other three are already. I wouldn't say Abner's been established, but Garcia and Saalfrank should be on
yeah,
the major league roster on opening day if nothing goes awry. And Mike Hazen doesn't tend to run with three um, lefties in a bullpen.
two
Usually he
usually.
sticks with two,
Yeah,
unless he gets put in a situation where he kind of has to, like last season at certain points. He usually runs two lefties, six righties. So I'd imagine if you go to target anyone, it would probably be a righty.
Joe Mantiply, bring him back. Just kidding. Yeah, I didn't even see him. I didn't even see him on the free agent list on Sport Track. I don't know if he's even going to pitch again. God bless him. He did well for us for a little bit there, but you're
I
right.
feel like
Yeah, two
I feel like
lefties. Good.
I feel like we're gonna do all the nostalgia things, just bring back like Paul Sewald, Taylor Clark, Paul Goldschmidt. Let's just let's just boost all the ticket sales. Everyone's back.
Yeah, go out and find wherever Chris Schneider is and sign him to backup catcher at the age of 51 or whatever he is now, probably. Um, yeah,
Or find
usually you have a nice leverage lefty and then you have a middle relief lefty. That's generally how bullpens operate. Puck was usually that high leverage guy. Manaply was usually that middle relief guy for us for the past two seasons. Obviously, Manaply beginning of this season kind of unfolded there a little bit. Puck got hurt, so Sal Frank became your high leverage lefty, and then Garcia kind of became that middle relief lefty for a little bit. I love Garcia. I think he's got great stuff. I can see him being a high leverage guy for us down the line. Sal Frank is interesting to me. Very, very interesting. That curve is. I feel like you don't see a curveball like that in a relief setting all too often. And I think right now he's slotted as the closer per Fangraphs. Um, I imagine if we were to roll out what we had now, that closing role would be a revolving door again, like it was at the end of last season. So I think you have to go out now with the savings from Arenado, bid on a guy like Say Anthony Dominguez, or go out and trade for a high leverage arm, see what Tampa Bay's got going on, see what the Cardinals have got going on. They also have a fire sale right now, but I think you got to go and get, like I said, a high leverage righty for sure. to really cement that role and let those young guys like Brandon Garcia or Andrew Hoffman eat at the major league level, I think.
Part of me worries though that if you don't make those moves, you're putting a guy like Sal Frank in a late inning situation like that. And nothing against Sal Frank, but you're talking about a guy who's not the prototypical closer type.
Yeah.
He's mostly 89, 92. Um, he is decent against both splits, but I would imagine that you probably want him more against lefties. So when you're putting a guy who's not necessarily of a closer build and doesn't necessarily pitch in a closer style into a closing spot, you are playing with fire. I feel like that's something that they've made mistakes on. I believe that's what had Chafin struggle later on in his time at the Diamondbacks. It's also what kind of ruined Sewald's time as he
Yeah.
slowly started to decrease in velocity and sort of lost touch with his um, tunneling. That's something that also happened. It, in a way, I just think that they need a guy who you can just lean on and just be like, "Hey, go out there." And you kind of had that with Justin Martinez, but if we all, as we all remember, when that started out in 24, he was not good. It was constantly having to go up to him, make sure that he wasn't getting in his own head. And even with that, like they still need to find an arm that you can just lean on and trust. And they did kind of miss that in the free agent market. I mean, you didn't get yourself a Helsley, you didn't get yourself a Fairbanks, you didn't get really any major arm. The only guy you have right now added to your relief core is basically Loizaga. That's the only guy who's really, at least in my mind, going to be a possible serious contributor to the bullpen. And with that, I just wonder, are we trying to lean too much on the prospects? Because in a way, I mean, we can all love, Juan Burgos, Brandon Garcia. We can, fall in love with all these bullpen arms, all these rookies, all these like really quality young players. But at the same time, if you lean on young players, you have to understand that there are going to be mistakes. There are going to be issues. I can use an example like Juan Rio, who has really good stuff. But as we saw, when he got pushed into closer spots, that turned out to be very ugly.
Yeah.
We saw that at first with J Mart when he was pushed into a closer spot in 2023 from minimal appearances in early 2024. He was not good. He was downright terrible and couldn't find a zone. We just have to expect that with younger pitchers like this. We can't just lean on them. You have to go and get yourself an established guy, probably not 38, but you need to get a guy there who can really stand out and really control those innings.
Yeah, Diamondbacks definitely missed out on the bullpen market. It was very early on in the offseason. You saw a guy like Kenley Jansen go to Detroit, I believe. Fairbanks to Miami of all places, which was surprising to me. Um, and Weaver to the Mets. The kind of the top three closing guys. Diaz to the Dodgers. They missed out on that market for sure. And there's very few guys left. So yeah, I think like I said, Seranthony Dominguez is pretty much the last one left. If you're going to go out on the free agent market, that's the last person you have, unless you're looking for another Sewald-esque situation where you're trading around and trying to find that guy. One thing of note and one person that is coming back is Dre Jamison. His story is very interesting. Obviously, Diamondbacks had him as a starter, bounced him back between reliever and starter, ended up getting hurt, but probably contributed to it a little bit. He looked decent this year in his few limited starts or sorry, limited outings. Interested to see what he does in the spring. But like you said, you're starting to throw young guys into these roles. Bad things can happen. So I think establishing somebody that is a bridge closer, which is what we need, to help also develop one of these millions of prospects that we have to help us be the long-term closer, I think is the way to go.
I feel like there's going to be a non-zero chance that at a point this year, we'll see one of either Dre Jamison or Yolbert Diaz get closing spots. Both of them have the stuff to do it, certainly. Both have had very checkered histories, at least with both injuries and consistency. But both of them have, at least with Yolbert, he showed out in Venezuelan Winter League. Jamison has shown flashes, especially when he's on. Both of them could hit upwards of 99. They have the prototypical closer build. You have the hard breaking ball. with that though, I do feel like we you just can't lean on that as much as I'm the prospect guy. I love prospects. If you continue to lean on prospects, it's gonna bite you.
Yeah.
If you lean on them all the time, you have to understand that these people are raw. They don't know necessarily how to pitch to MLB guys. They haven't really faced that level of competition yet. The MLB ball is slightly different. You're in a completely different environment, especially if you're coming from the Pacific Coast League. It changes everything about how you pitch. And with that, you're also not only leaning on that, you also realize this is their first time pitching in such environments. I mean, you're going from 10,000 state person stadiums at most to 40,000 people screaming at you. And with that, you've got a lot of stress on those guys. And just because of that, I just feel like nothing against our young guys in the system, but you just have to have guys in the back end who aren't relying on the young guys.
Yeah, much like we talked about earlier with, protecting people in the lineup, it's the same for the bullpen. You got to protect people in the bullpen. You got to have people that take the leverage off of those guys so they can develop. Unfortunately, last year we had a lot of injuries and guys were developed by trial by fire. It was like, hey, well, these guys are down. Congratulations, you're closing the game for us this year. And I don't remember what the value was. I know it was a major league record. I want to say it was 14 different people or 15 different people that had a save for us last year.
It was 17.
17. Okay, yeah, that's unheard of. I mean, generally speaking, a ball club has 40 to 50 saves in a year, collectively, usually done by one person. So to see, a third of what that number would be done by 17 different people is otherworldly,
I
um,
mean,
and not sustainable.
this list is insane, by the way. I just pulled
Is
it
my
up.
is my guy McGuff on there? I think he's on there.
McGuff is not on here, but
Dang it.
you've got obviously you have the obvious names, but you got guys like Jake Woodford, Anthony DeSclafani, Taylor Rossi's got two on here. Uh, Ryan Nelson, yeah, Ryan Nelson's on here.
The beginning of the
Um,
year, he was relieving.
John Curtis is on here. Bryce Jarvis, Dre Jameson, who only has 3 innings. Kyle Nelson, who only had 2 innings. And if I'm not mistaken, Casey Kelly, if he had pitched an extra inning in one game, would have been on here as well.
Yeah,
Like this
God bless
is,
him.
I mean, the whole list is just insane. You can't run this back, and you can't run back most of these names and expect it to work. I
Yeah,
mean, this is ugh.
yeah. So I mean, Diamondbacks still obviously have their work cut out for them. They are making strides now the past 2 weeks. They're starting to build some depth, some non-roster invites, some minor league deals, which is good. Always good to have that kind of stuff. We have, our cemented third baseman now, with, some DH mixing between probably the likes of Del Castillo, Peyton Smith, Ketel Marte, Nolan Arenado. I'm sure you'll see a lot of split time at DH. Unsure of the path forward for Jordan Lawler, unsure of what the outfield will look like after spring training with the emergence of Ryan Waldschmidt, and the competing level of Jordan Lawler. And we have some dark horses in there. You got Jose Fernandez, who's a possibility. You have guys I'm sure that'll be non-roster invites that are close to MLB ready, like Christian Robinson, that could be added to the roster if needed. It's going to be interesting. It will be a very interesting spring for this ball club. But if there is one thing that is certain, even after the Nolan Arenado deal, you got some money off the books, from St. Louis. You need to go out. You need to get an established guy on the back end and start building the bullpen. And I think the Diamondbacks are set after that.
And even if you don't get that kind of guy money wise, get yourself a decent bat. Maybe it's Goldie. I don't know. Maybe Scott Boras is whispering in a year of Mike Hazen and or Ken Kendrick being like, "Hey, I know Kyle Tucker wants to be here." That was a rumor this offseason. I think Mark Fines had said that.
Crazy.
Not, but
50
that's
million,
probably not
$50
happening.
million dollars a year is what the Mets offered him. $50 million dollars a year. That is a fourth of the Diamondbacks payroll. That is almost all of the Marlins payroll.
But if not just signing a bat through free agency, trade for another bat, trade for another bat, and then maybe go trade for a reliever. I think that the trade market, at least for the relief, is a lot more extensive. There's a lot of good names out there. Um, I want to shout out a good friend of mine, Jacob Oliver, for bringing up a fun name, which was Andrew Nardi, who had really good underlying metrics,
Good
and a
lefty.
guy who probably isn't going to cost you a whole lot. Um, those are the kind of names that I think I would be more interested in. And while that guy's a lefty, that guy's also just is absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, very good pitcher. And will be
But
the show legend for my rebuilds for sure.
but yeah, for this team to get to where they want to be, they need to add more arms, probably another two in the bullpen. And in addition, you probably need another bat, a guy who could probably DH as well.
Yeah, I think the most obvious move for the Diamondbacks to make, and I know it is a nostalgia train, is Paul Goldschmidt to lock down first base, help develop a guy like Tyler Locklear when he comes back. You'll have Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt reunited as the elderly couple in the dugout. If you don't remember, I believe it was 2022. Goldie won MVP. Nolan Arenado right behind him in voting, not too far removed from that. And Chase Field does wonders for hitters. It's a possibility you see those two tackle 2 to 4 WAR this year and really cement the lineup. But yeah, I think the Diamondbacks are headed in the right direction finally after a slow offseason. Bullpen is the biggest area of focus, and then I think if you can't get that, then you do the Colorado Rocky method when they're on it, and you just try to build runs. You try to build an offense to protect the bullpen, so you don't have to dig into it too deep.
If they Here's the thing: if you give up 9 runs, just score 10 runs. That's all you have to do.
That's
I
yeah,
mean, it worked in 2024. Why not try it again?
yeah. Hey, if you don't know this about baseball, you got more runs the other team, you win the ball game. So it's crazy how that might work in some places. Um, Riley, any closing remarks to the kind of stuff that we talked about? I mean, there's been a lot that's happened over the span of the past 24 hours. Anything you want to touch on, or anything you want to say before we close it out?
Nothing really. All I would really say is that we're getting pretty close to spring. We're already having players show up at the complex, like guys who weren't previously there before. So just know that I think that the pace will be picked up slightly more now. We're getting to the stage now where players have to start showing up. They at least have to get their situations fixed up too. Because let's just put it this way: you try and move in 2 weeks to a completely different city, get situated, and then at go start training out in Scottsdale. So hopefully most of these moves happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we'll start seeing some change of pace from the Diamondbacks front office and the other front offices around the league as pitchers and catchers report here in about 3 weeks or so. So, um, well, Riley, it was good to have you on. Good to kind of talk about everything that's going on, and I look forward to maybe doing another episode with you. What do you think?
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys.